mechanical. Now let's just talk about some more sensors. This is the magnetic direction, which way is north, east, south, and west. And the takeaway of this is no matter what the manufacturer says, you need to calibrate your sensors, okay? And in particular, the presence of the motors, even if they're not spinning, the permanent magnets in the motors affect this sensor. So I had to recalibrate it. I need to look at my noise. We saw that in the last slide, right? I look at the probability mass function of a fixed input, right? I fix the input to be a constant. And then I look at the noise profile, the reproducibility of that to look at how much noise, okay? And add the appropriate filter. Here's another sensor board. This is the one that's on the cell phone. It's a lot like the things we just did. It can measure temperature, humidity, light intensity, and it has a Hall effect sensor on it. Again, it uses I²C and basically puts the sensors, put the sensors on the same I²C bus. A general approach to making things smaller, better, cheaper, faster is to integrate the mechanical, the physical parts of the transducer with the electrical parts, with the digital parts into one integrated circuit. Okay. Eventually, I presume that the circuits will also integrate in the microcontroller. But in this particular class, you will see that the sensors are separate from the microcontroller and interface with some kind of logic. One way to tell how complicated one of these chips are to count the number of registers in there. Okay. And this is the temperature sensor is a fairly simple one. They claim it's accurate. Do you remember what your job is to do? Your job is to actually calibrate it and determine if the specification from the device is true. Remember, resolution is the smallest change. The smallest change that I can distinguish. Notice that resolution for this is much smaller than its accuracy. That's because, as we saw in the last video, lots of things can affect accuracy, like drift, transducer, interchangeability, noise. Well, noise affects both. All right. All right, T. Here's the humidity sensor. Again, it's just fairly simple, right? It's only got 20 things in it. But again, it combines the physics of the transducer into electrical, into digital, into one chip, okay? Which is interfaced with I²C. Notice again that, here's another sensor. It's the light sensor. From this curve, this is response, normalized response of the sensor as a function of wavelength. The sensor was tuned such that the sensor and the sensitivity to which wavelengths affect the sensor was matched to what the human can see. So this is something that will determine. This sensor will determine. We'll see, at least in the magnitude sense, what the human eye could sense. A fairly simple chip. Notice it has a cool thing where you can turn the power off. You can, with this GPIO, this is a simple GPIO pin here. You can set this high to use the sensor. You could set this low to save power. And again, just like all the other sensors, there's physics, there's electrical, and there's digital. Okay? And in this class, the microcontroller here is separate. Okay? This Hall effects, this sensor is very different than the other sensors in this chapter in a sense that it'll actually generate an ADC input. And again, this is a GPIO pin. But now this particular Hall effect sensor, which is determining the presence of either a north or south magnet, it requires more current than the previous one, so it uses a MOSFET here. So if this GPIO pin can turn on the current to the device, or you can do the GPIO pin to turn it off. But we basically got an A to D converter, which is going to determine whether or not how close a magnet is to our signal. So a south magnet goes one way, and a north magnet goes the other way. Okay. This sensor is in the RSLK robot in the tachometer, a similar sensor, a Hall effect sensor. Another sensor board that's used in the fitness device, this is the Bluetooth. That's the Bluetooth, low energy. And so this is lab 2. And this board here is a sensor board. It has light, temperature, microphone, accelerometer, and display. You can see it's got a display as well. So this accelerometer has analog inputs, and these two sensors are I²C. Oh, and that's analog, and these are analog, the joystick. All right, so another sensor pack that you might see if you do this lab 2. And so in summary, your job when we use sensors is to learn how it works, get yourself dirty deep into the physics and math, because there you can understand how it works, because knowing how it works will help you determine how it doesn't work. In other words, selectivity to other sensors, selectivity to other inputs. Because there's thousands of choices, you got to choose the right one, okay? And you got to know its limitations. Every sensor that we have will require some microcontroller signal processing, and it's your job to calibrate. Okay? What we saw in this chapter is a lot of the sensors are integrated. The physics, the electrical aspects, and the digital aspects all integrated. Okay? Your job's to calibrate. Remember to understand dimensional analysis when you're looking at understanding how a sensor works, because knowing the units of each of your terms will help you connect it up. All right, so next we're going to go on to sensor integration, and then we'll go on to actuators. Okay, enjoy.